Started. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see some professionals who I've met over the years, but never seen in black and white and color. So it's nice to see everybody. We do these mostly over the phone, but we're pulling out all the stops today for our partners T-Systems here. So in fairness, I want you to know that this is a sponsored event co-hosted with Carl and Alejandro over at T-Systems. With that said, we're going to continue to follow our model of no sales pitch. So we're going to have a group conversation about trends in the market. I want you to all view this as a networking opportunity to learn from each other's experiences. So the model is identical to every one of our other BWG group sessions. There is a reactions button on there. There's also a chat window. So use them. If you want to jump right in, jump right in. If you want to raise a hand, raise a hand. You want to ask a question in the chat, we can do that as well. Lastly, if you hear something interesting from somebody else across the group, and you want to connect with them, you know, LinkedIn is brilliant. You can go directly, or you can reply right to us here at BWG. Thanks to Neil helping us pull this group together, and we're happy to make any intros that are relevant to anybody here. But let me introduce Carl and Alejandro. Guys, do me a favor. Carl, take a lead. Give a quick intro to the group before we start our session.
Great. My name is Carl Westfall. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm responsible for the delivery of all of our SAP services for T-Systems North America. So if you look at T-Systems, we're organized by portfolio. One of those is specifically around SAP and our complete portfolio of offerings. And my role, specifically in North America, is to make sure that we deliver the services effectively and work with all of our accounts to make sure every customer is satisfied and all projects are executed properly. So that's my main role here.
How big is the SAP practice at T-Systems?
Well, in terms of people, you know, we have probably over 5,000 worldwide SAP experts when you look at it in terms of people.
Got it. And is that global? Is that a global practice?
It is global. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we're headquartered out of Germany, and but we have points of presence throughout the world: Mexico, obviously India, Eastern Europe, both Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, and other points of presence throughout Asia as well. So
perfect. Alejandro, please give a quick intro here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. I'm Alex Martinez, or Alejandro, whatever you want to call me. I am responsible for the emerging technologies and also SAP sales for T-Systems North America. So it's interesting because it's combining our growth portfolio units. As Carl mentioned, we are divided in portfolio units, and it's combining both, which are part of our growth portfolio, IoT and SAP. And combining these, we offer very innovative solutions for our customers. And as Carl mentioned, we have a big presence, obviously, worldwide with more than 5,000 SAP experts. We have more than 8 million users of SAP worldwide as well. And we are very proud to have the biggest single SAP system in the world with around 850,000 SAPs. No? So that's how big we are. I'm responsible for sales for these two portfolio units, and happy to be here, no, Greg?
That's amazing. You're running the world's largest SAP implementation.
Yeah,
that's correct. The SAP system, yeah.
That's cool. Is that T-Mobile, or is that one of your clients?
Awesome.
It's you.
One of our clients, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, guys, look, we set up this conversation to talk about SAP in the world of COVID. It's a very, you know, People magazine kind of title, so apologies for that. But I think that the idea is right, which is how are people shifting projects in light of a whole new world of remote work, in a world of automation. We were talking for years about the straight line to HANA and then the straight line to S4 HANA. So Carl, I'm going to ask you to start us off here. based on some of the experience you've seen with some of your customers, what's changed over the last 4 months in terms of the roadmaps or priorities of companies around their SAP instances?
Yeah, I think you put it into two. If you look at COVID specifically during this period of time, I think you put it into two specific modes. Number one was just stabilize, right? I think everybody's initial reaction was keep the business running, minimize disruption. Let's make sure as workforces were transitioning to becoming more mobile and all of those things, everybody was very focused on stabilizing operations, right? So we don't want a lot of changes. We don't want a lot of project work. So we saw that right away, initially saying, let's maintain and keep the business stable. Now that we've reached past that point, and now people have acclimated to working remotely and the businesses are functioning again. Now what we're seeing is, okay, what projects can we do while we're in this cycle, right? So, and it depends on your sector, right? Some business sectors are severely impacted, right? Their business is down. If you're retail, if you're some of these other areas where your business is really down. Automotive, for example, is really challenged, right? Automotive factories and whatnot got mothballed for quite a while. But some of our customers there was like, okay, look, this is an opportunity now. Let's take on some of these projects that you haven't been wanting to do because it's disruptive to your plants and some of these other things globally. And let's do some of this maintenance, right? If you think about it from a factory standpoint, a lot of factories, when they have downtime, that's okay. When the business has downtime, the factories are like, thank God, we can do some maintenance now. We can do some of those things that we want to do that we're not allowed to do.
Can
so
you
we're
give
starting
us
to
an
see
example?
that.
I love examples. Tell me, what's something now that, things are slower or an operation is shut down that they're able to implement now around SAP?
Yeah, first and foremost, what we're seeing is a lot of push. If they're not already on HANA, we're seeing a lot of push to move databases to the HANA infrastructure, right? So we're seeing a push for HANA. We're now also seeing a lot more discovery work, if you will, for the preparation for S4. So we're doing security assessments. We're doing system scans to look at code compatibility and basically assessing effort, right? What's going to be your effort and what changes are you going to have to make as you prepare for S4? This is time now that companies have to look at some of those things. So that while they're not pushing the buttons, I'm not sitting here saying we're seeing a lot of push to S4 in terms of execution. We're seeing a lot more preparation and a lot more what I call readiness assessment to make that jump so they can start to better understand the business case for that.
Carl, can we talk just for one last question for you? And I think anybody who's been on my calls know I like to stir the pot. So I'm gonna do that and go around our group and hear from everybody to throw in your 2 cents. I'm curious about how rapidly or to what extent people are finding value or just pursuing a strategy to move their SAP to public cloud.
Is that to me?
SAP on AWS, SAP on Azure, or on GCP. I'm curious what the ROI of it is, because I can pretty easily think about the lock-in and the utility-based pricing that will crush you over time.
Right.
But I don't know. It seems like everything's going to the cloud, so I'd like to hear if it's happening around SAP.
Okay. Is that to me or is that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah. We are seeing some of that. It's probably not as. It's interesting if you listen to what a lot of analysts and people are saying. I don't think we've seen the push to it that everybody thought we would. I think that adoption of moving everything to the public cloud, because at the end of the day, you still have to operate it, right? You still have to have basis. You still have to have all those functions, and all those things still cost money. So at the end of the day, it becomes what are your operating costs and what are your capital costs from an infrastructure perspective. Now, where we do see it is maybe through mergers and acquisitions, in those areas where companies are making fundamental changes and they have to decide, do we really want to keep this in-house? Or if they have to make an investment, right? We're going to be doing this big upgrade anyway. Does it make sense to keep this in-house and to continue to manage this and maintain, this infrastructure internally? So that's where we're seeing customers make that decision, either as part of a bigger acquisition or, like I said, as an internal decision, end of life or just sunsetting things. In addition to that, I would say where we are seeing customers experiment with public cloud is for dev and QA and some of those other areas where they want to experiment a little bit. So now there is systems where we can ramp up, us and every provider can ramp up environments, right? Like sandboxes where they can experiment with some of those things, where they can ramp that up and shut it down, maybe run a project, maybe run a proof of concept and then shut it down. But as far as actual, if we look at our core customer base, our hardcore SAP customers, are we seeing a big push to public cloud? No, not right now.
Perfect. All right, let's stir the pot. Let me also remind everybody, use this group as a resource, either right here. You want to hear from somebody, just ask the question, or offline if you want to take it offline, please. I welcome that as well. Steve, I'm going to ask you have your video on and everything here. You're just to my right. And I just spoke to you like, I don't know, it's been less than a week. So It's nice to speak with you again.
Nice to be here.
Steve's SAP program director at Pratt Industries, one of the largest corrugated cardboard companies. So business is good for you guys. At least I can see driving down my street. Give a little intro on your SAP, and I'd love to hear a little bit how things have changed.
For sure.
Over the last 6 months.
Business-wise, things are going pretty well. As most of you can tell by the boxes appearing on your doorsteps. We have a unique situation because our SAP environment is shared as an instance with our sister company in Australia, who actually are the keeper of everything SAP. We're the users over here. We have some minor technical abilities, but basically all the heavy lifting and decisions are made over there in Australia. I think that's going to start to shift as we become a little bit bigger than they are over the years, but for the most part, they've got the infrastructure and we do not. That said, we have expanded our footprint with EPC, SAC, and some heavy use of the BW that they're not doing. They're using different tools for those processes. So that's made us a little bit different and a little bit more independent. In terms of decision making, we're on ECC 6 on a SQL Server database at AWS. I don't see that changing anytime soon. We did evaluate going to S4 a few years ago and determined that it was not so beneficial because most of our operational systems are not in SAP. They are custom or proprietary or industry specific sales and operational systems. So we're kind of in a holding pattern in terms of any major change. That said, we've just hired a couple of people with good SAP experience in the finance team, and we're already seeing the benefits of that in terms of evaluating exactly what we're doing and making better use of some of the tools that we already have and enhancing data, master data in areas that we hadn't really explored before, even this morning in fixed assets.
Hey, Steve, I asked Carl the question, have you done the TCO comparison of running ECC 6 on AWS versus your own appliances?
So that's years ago we did that. We've been on AWS now for, wow, 5+ years. We previously had our own little room at Telstra out there in Australia. It was our equipment, but it was housed in their offices. That didn't really go so well, and we moved off the Oracle database over to SQL Server on AWS, and it's been very, very, very efficient. There was quite a savings there.
Oh, that's interesting. So SQL's nice. SQL's cheaper. Is it been performing under SAP?
Well, again, anytime we push a button, it has to go 9,000 miles before it does anything. So we really feel like it's gotten better. We did an upgrade, and we're really happy with the performance.
I want to come back to the AWS question because I get it all the time. Is there any heartburn or is there comfort with the TCO of running on AWS? I'm not sure if it's the transactional data or if you end up, getting expanded data warehouse or, compute clusters. If it's not a problem, that's great. Is it a problem in terms of cost inflation on AWS?
Not that I'm aware of. It hasn't come through in our billings from our Australia cousins.
Got it. And I heard better use of tools. I'm curious, what's one enhancement that is on a wish list? It may be a new module. It may be, I don't know, wide open. What's one enhancement?
We're going to spend a lot of time this year with the CapEx module and fixed assets. As you've probably read in the Wall Street Journal, we're making huge investments in capital. Mr. Pratt has promised Mr. Trump something like $2 billion of capital improvements over the next 3 or 4 years. So we've got a lot of capital outstanding, and tracking that is not so easy when we have subsidiaries who really aren't staffed up to do that kind of heavy financial analysis. So we do a lot of that at corporate. And we use our team at corporate, which has now been enhanced, to help us do that.
Perfect. Hey, Steve, I appreciate you starting us off. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
I'm going to ask Ravi Ravakoti to go next year. Ravi, I'm admiring your background. Thanks so much for joining. Please give your intro to the group at Advanced Energy.
Thank you, Greg, and nice actually seeing you with the face-to-face, because I haven't, I spoke to you multiple times on the phone, but I never really saw you. That's good.
Yeah.
Good to have these video calls. Yeah, I'm Ravi Ravakoti, Senior Director of Applications, Enterprise Applications for a company called Advanced Energy, which is based in Denver, Colorado. So for us, we have 2 groups. We recently made an acquisition, something called Artisan, and that one runs on Oracle EBS, and the legacy Advanced Energy runs on SAP. So we are actually, I'm heading those 2 teams. So we're trying to look at merging them, in the near future.
I love it. That's like a big tug of war.
Oh yeah.
Who's going to win, Oracle or SAP?
I don't know. I'm a really objective way of doing the business. So everything I go with the numbers, right? So one is, the total cost of ownership, and the other is functionality mix, and how the business takes it, what the change management is involved, all of those things.
What are they both have enough gravity? I mean, are they both sizable implementations, complex implementations?
Both are, before merging, they are both of equal size. And whereas the main difference is the AE side was more of a high price mark and a high-end equipment, versus Artisan side is a high volume, low price equipment. So they have a lot of manufacturing from the previous Artisan side, and the AE side it is not, right? So just to get the perspective, from about $600 million to $1.2 billion, right? So it's almost double. Whereas from the employee strength-wise, it was 2,000 people. Now it's 10,000 people, right? So that you can see how the volume mix is different, right?
I'm super curious. I mean, if you had to choose, which one would you choose? If you could right now just say, I'm going to go one or the other. Obviously, it's not a one-person decision, and it's not a single factor decision. But if you could just choose, which one would you prefer?
So what we're doing is actually, Carl was right on, what we are trying to do as the industry. So instead of choosing one of them, because both of them are kind of a little older versions, it's not too old. The Oracle is in 12.6, SAP is even older. So we are we are actually forming a team to assess both of the cloud products, both Oracle and SAP cloud products, S/4HANA and Oracle Cloud ERP. Then we are actually going to map to our functionality, then decide which way to go. So we started the team effort on that area. So probably in the Q1 timeframe, we are going to actually select one of them. So we may probably drop both of them and go into the cloud. Say that's one of the mergers and acquisition is one of the business case to go to the cloud, and this is one of those business cases.
I like
That's
that.
a good
It's
example,
funny.
Robbie.
I may have mentioned it. I was at Lucent years ago, and we were dealing with something like 15 independent SAP instances, and we decided it's crazy. There isn't enough collaboration. There's duplicate data. There's mismatched data. There are different processes, different everything. So we said we're going to go, and we worked with IBM, and we did a big bang. We called it the Big Bang, and it was an aptly named project. And it was to get down to 3 instances: Asia, North America, and Europe. And the project imploded. We probably spent $70 million over 2 years until somebody thankfully just said, this is ridiculous. And what happened over the next 5 years was much more measured, taking down some old systems and gradually improving it, as opposed to just a big, wholesale, frontal lobotomy. You can't do. So those big changes, I understand. You can't just say, I'm going to get rid of that Oracle and move everything to SAP. It doesn't work.
It's hard. And I think I also have one question to Carl, because now looks like you are in touch with the industry a lot more. What do you think about the SAP's maturity level in the non-finance modules, in S/4HANA specifically?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that. You're saying outside of the core. In the S4 generation of the project, we're seeing a lot more maturity in terms of the actual modules, better integration of some of that functionality, especially in the user experience, but also in core functionality like CRM and some of that type of functionality where their maturity has improved a lot. The legacy, the ECC legacy stuff, not so much. I think that's why you see so many partners, so many ECC customers with, I think it was Stephen that was talking about a lot of edge systems and a lot of third-party things that are integrated in. I think that's why you see that, because that native functionality is not mature. But yeah, no, definitely. Alex, do you have some more thoughts on that in terms of the maturity of some of the functionality outside of finance? Obviously, SAP is very good at finance. Always has.
Yeah. Mainly, I heard a lot of concerns in the distribution and the manufacturing area. So they're not mature, or they're still building a lot of the modules in a way.
Yeah, I think the other piece, the other big piece that I see on that specifically is business intelligence. No, so one thing is obviously finance. Well, we all know about that, but I think the business intelligence side, where you need to analyze all the business warehouse information, all the different analytics and reporting that needs to be done, especially now that we are all remote and we need to have access to the data in a very fast fashion and so on. I think that's the other piece where we've seen a lot of transformation and it's getting, I would say, way more mature than it was before. And also the openness to connect to other instances, like sometimes from BW to other satellite systems to SAP, like Snowflake or things like that are something as well, things that are happening that I see that is growing. And as you said, Carl, I think ECC, is the big one, and is the one that in general most of our customers are really trying to move ahead on that.
To your point, Robbie, about industries, I actually just got off of a call. We're working on a proposal for a very large customer that does distribution. Just their core business is product distribution globally, and they are a long-term SAP customer. They went through a similar assessment for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years of assessing, and they had an investor, kind of breathing down their necks to make sure that they were making the right decision financially, and they're choosing to upgrade. They're in a kind of a situation, almost the same situation. They bought another company, and that was almost equal size. And they're bringing both companies to a new instance of ECC 6, and then are going to migrate eventually to S4. So, I mean, that's just one company. Obviously, everybody's criteria is different. But also our other core customers, we have a lot of customers in automotive. I mean, when we go back to our core, globally, we have a lot of customers in automotive, which the manufacturing side, obviously, and those are the customers that are most satisfied with, I would say, with SAP at this point, and are staying on that track. Is your strategy ultimately, what we're seeing is, when you have two companies kind of equal size, maybe a lot of legacy process and all of that, what we're seeing is go to the new instance, whether that's in the cloud or wherever, but go greenfield and try to and enforce that standard functionality, enforce adoption of standard processes, because that enables kind of the stuff that Stephen was talking about, which is if we want to bolt in third-party edge systems, we can do that so much quicker if we don't have a ton of customization to account for. So is that kind of your overall strategy? Is
you nailed it. That is the exact reason, because there are a bunch of customizations out there in both sides, and I don't like it. And
yeah.
When we buy a company, which we do every so often, within 6 weeks, they're using our SAP chart of accounts, payables and receivables, banking, the whole 9 yards. We just get them hooked up right away. Otherwise, we lose control too fast.
Yeah.
That was
that's exactly why that's for kind of.
That was my strategy. I actually came from ON Semiconductor. That's when I met.
Okay, I know ON very well. I worked for one role.
Yeah. So in that company, it doesn't matter which company, how big of a company we buy. That's a $2 billion company we buy. We bring it into our systems. Whether some of them we had a mainframe systems and Oracle, and it doesn't matter what it is there. We bring it to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this company, that's not the strategy how they chose it. So I'm kind of trying to change that now.
Ravi, thank you. Let's keep stirring. And I'm happy for someone to raise a hand. Otherwise, I get the. I'm going to volunteer. How about Mark Holloway? Mark, let's get you in here. We haven't met before. Let's see if let's see if you're on the line and maybe share a story with the group.
Well, I'm here, but I'll be honest, I'm more comfortable listening for this first session, so I can kind of get the feel for the group.
You are absolutely entitled to. If you have any questions, lob them in. Thank you. How about Dave Coyle, US Geo Survey? Dave, are you on the line with us?
Yes. I can kind of describe our project. That's about all I can do.
I think we're just looking for a story in terms of whether you're on SAP or another underlying system, what's changed in the current environment.
Yeah, so we have our FBMS is a federal system that you might be familiar with. And they basically serve as operations for a lot of other federal government agencies. So we use FBMS for what you could call big financials.
Yep.
We also have this warehouse hydrologic instrumentation facility where we want to go more granular. We want to have work orders and field service like with SAP Work Manager or a similar offspring product like Liquid GUI XT from Synactive. So something where you have a field capable, so you can integrate. Basically, we want to take instrumentation, ship it to the field offices, and then deploy it from the field offices to stream gauge sites. And we want to know where those assets are. And I'm pretty much a beginner, but I think I've got learning some of the language like functional location. So if we can make a stream gauge site a functional location, and we can know all of the equipment that's at that location. So my understanding is that we need something similar to plant management. It's similar to plant management, but we're doing field service. All
right, now, are you doing that within your SAP or I'm not sure if it's an SAP instance. So
well, that's the question. Yeah, the instrumentation facility is actually running SAP Business One, which I learned that has nothing to do with SAP. So that's first learning curve. But we're going to a new facility. We want to see whether we can use the existing FBMS. Of course, the existing financial business management system FBMS has glacial change. The change is glacial. So so it could be an S4 could be a good, you're talking about the risk of the cloud, and it could be a good way for us to go. We might need to build our own parallel system just so that we can avoid the glacial change of the big system, and then take these big these coarse grain things like Basis Plus down to the project level where we can have, we can do a fine grain management from an ERP point of view.
Hey, David, can you take one step back for us here?
Yeah, sure.
I'm interested in what the geological, what the use case is. The U.S. Geological Survey. What's the deliverable? Is this?
Yeah, this is part of it. Yeah, like I said, we have big financials on the other side, reporting to Congress and all that. We have Basis Plus, which is big, fine, coarse grain projects. What we want to do is basically we have about 1,500. You could call them fields. We call them hydrologic technicians or hydrologists or hydrographers, but it's pretty much the same as field service. So we want to be able to efficiently do field service. We want to load the equipment on the truck, go out and service sites and replace a data logger or a sensor or a compressor. And we want to know where our equipment is at all times.
Got it.
There's also a calibration side to that as well.
Yeah. Is the deliverable here, mapping the U.S. and the U.S. features?
The ultimate deliverable is the services that the U.S. Geological Survey provides to our nation, which is basically quality data. So if you have disputes between two different states or like a golf course and a municipality, they all trust the USGS data as being unbiased and scientifically accurate. So since 1897, we've been providing scientifically accurate data. So we have a pretty long history behind us.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We provide that value to nationally and to some extent internationally.
Interesting. Hey, Bob, I see your hand up there. Let's let you get into the mix. Let me unmute you.
There we go.
There we go. Good to see you, Bob.
Yeah, so this interesting. So I was a CTO co-founder of T-Systems, got acquired by Juniper. Juniper's a big SAP customer. So we brought in a ServiceNow. So Mist, we had the ServiceNow sales, quote to cash thing. And so the thing we're going through right now between SAP and ServiceNow is kind of this going from a SaaS business, trying to get the SAP front end systems to kind of support more of a SaaS business. So I'm kind of interested, and to be honest, I'm not a finance person. So I'm watching this integration discussion going on, how do we bring this, hey, we have this ServiceNow SPQ system for, integrating when we ship product, right? It's integrated right into our sales system. Does SAP have a similar thing? I'm trying to understand why is this, right now there's a big discussion of why is it so hard to transition this ServiceNow thing over into an SAP thing?
For quote to cash, basically. Yes. for the front end billing and configuration and all that stuff.
Yeah, but there's an interesting piece, right? There's a piece of hardware that gets shipped, and when that hardware gets shipped, it gets tied into the sales system. So when it actually leaves the distribution system, right, at that point, it gets associated with the customer. So there's an interesting relationship between the supply chain and the quote to cash machinery that needs to happen. And I think the question is, does SAP, I'm trying to understand the integration challenges. Is it a question that SAP does not have this functionality? How does SAP support cloud SaaS companies, where you basically have to configure, the supply chain is going to be tied in with the product chain.
Well, I'm going to put this to the group. I would be shocked if SAP doesn't have a quote to cash module.
For SaaS, optimized for SaaS, kind of a, and this gets into bundling, right? How to bundle hardware and software services together in different ways.
I'll put it to the group. I certainly don't have an answer, but I would be interested if anyone else is tracking software. I assume there's a subscription module. I assume that ties into the complexities of RevRec, as well as different allocation of discounts between hardware and
Right.
software and that ugly stuff.
Right.
Is anyone doing that with any? Alex, all right, man, you get the easy questions. Have you seen any of your customers using SAP for software hardware?
Yes, I mean, in general, I think that the challenge there is leveraging what SAP is offering as part of the software as a service, no? Because I think that there are different layers and there are a lot of different varieties that you need to, consider as part of the quote to cash particular. And I think that in general, the CRM functionalities that SAP offer bundle this type of capabilities. And I think that rather than considering, or at least what we've seen with our customers, is that rather than considering SAP and offer or take over the functionalities for software as a service, they try to bundle it with other services like what we offer in terms of combining SAP offering with our different DCS platforms and so on, where we offer the software as a service behind SAP, we offer the operations, we offer in general the customization that is needed to basically fill the gap that SAP has in terms of that particular piece of the quote to cash. And that's where basically we've seen a little bit more traction with our customers, no? But a particular solution for SAP that includes or that bundles that particular feature is something that we have not seen that often. Because I'm not aware of that one in particular, no? I don't know if anyone else in the group, but I haven't seen it. No?
Look, I've seen a lot of Zora. I've seen a lot of SteelBrick, which is now part of Salesforce. Even Oracle released a new quote to cash that has software and SaaS on it. Bob, I haven't heard of a software quote to cash or modern quote to cash module at SAP. It doesn't mean they don't have one, but I haven't heard of one.
Okay, I mean, that's what I kind of heard, that, hey, it's on the roadmap or something.
Yeah,
okay.
Even Workday doesn't have a solid one, which is kind of shocking. I know that's been a gap. It's not, it would seem like something that shouldn't be that hard for them to build, but actually it is more difficult than it sounds, shockingly.
Yeah, because you would think that the IoT, where you have kind of a subscription service business attached to some piece of hardware that has to go with it or something.
Let's try Peter. Peter over at Univision. You're SAP. Are you doing, I mean, you're not software, but do you know anything in terms of your bookings and mixing software, subscription, any of those types of products into your SAP environment?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Peter.
Good. Yeah, so we use EBS, but we use business objects. That's really the SAP presence. And then I think we use Concur, which may or may not be SAP now. I don't remember. But I used to do a lot of SAP. I'm actually triple certified SAP consultant. But I think it would be more in the SD space. And then I think you would probably need something very specific. So you don't want to build an ABAP or NetWeaver. So I think you're looking probably best at one of these solutions that were mentioned.
Yeah.
Or in case you want to use APIs, you could, see if you can do like an API thing. But I would probably talk to, contemporary SAP consultants, implementation firms that operate in that niche, in software and cloud and SaaS and stuff. That will be my recommendation. And just for us, what we do, we have a plethora, and it's insane, of so many systems to do all this stuff with rights and allocations and ads and reimbursement and what have you, that it's not even funny. But every specific case is very unique, so that's why we have a specific piece of software and legacy software for that, because unfortunately with broadcasting and rights management, it's so convoluted with laws that are different even by county and city, that it's not even a proposition that any big software company would be interested in building, because it's so niche. There would be no return on investment for, let's say, Oracle Inc. or SAP AG. So, yeah, hopefully that helps.
Peter, I'm going My video keeps going off. I got to figure this thing out. Tell us a little bit about what's changed over at Univision over the last 6 months. Obviously, advertising is down. I'm going to presume that's hitting you. But tell us how the roadmaps have shifted since the onset here of COVID.
Yeah, so we lost 40% of ad revenue. The good news is that our subscription revenue is actually really strong and solid because it's like 5 to 10 year contracts, so we're good there. We did have significant layoffs and furloughs and significant reduction in IT budgets. And that's probably going to be a while before that comes back. And then also, and this is all public information, by the way, we just had our second quarter results released and so forth. You know, we're going to have new ownership soon. So we don't really know what their plans are. And so we're kind of in a holding pattern on what 2021 and beyond will look like.
Are they an SAP shop?
EBS, but we do use SAP Business Objects. But we have, of course, it's not an Oracle call, but we were having some challenges.
Your Oracle EBS. You said EBS. I was thinking ECC.
No,
Yeah.
not ECC, not Enterprise Core Components, no. But yeah, it's kind of challenging with EBS because it's kind of a clunker, really. But of course, there's so much, you know, activated already in the balance sheet that it would take such a huge hit to go with SAP or not a cloud solution.
Mm-hmm.
That it's kind of hard to come up with a business case. Just from anecdotal evidence, right? Having done SAP since 2001, the only model that I've seen work for wholesale sort of implementations when you have lots of different instances of versions or whatever is to do a shadow build. And actually, I just came from a company I worked for a year, and they didn't go with SAP, but they went with Oracle Cloud. They hired me to go with SAP, but then they decided last minute to go the other way. But they're actually also doing the shadow build, and that they offshore will build a completely new finance accounting organization and all the other back office stuff like supply chain and shipping. And then on the go live date, they will basically call all the other people into conference rooms, and they're all laid off. Because it's just that way you get a fresh start and you can train people just the way you want to go forward.
Right.
It's very radical, but I've seen it work at another company where they did this with IBM. They used IBM template to get rid of numerous SAP templates and versions. And they built a completely new SAP, and then they did the cut over on one Monday morning. And it was a completely new sort of back office with a new ERP.
That's terrible, Peter.
Well, I don't know if it's terrible. It's changed, right? Instead of doing sort of attrition piecemeal over time, they just did the big bang, you know. And for a CIO and CFO and a CEO and a board, it can be very attractive because you can suddenly reduce your SG&A, sometimes up to 60%. So, you know, for shareholders, it's great. For the employees, yes, it's terrible.
And Peter, tell us about cloud. So you're an Oracle shop, okay? Is that going to Oracle Cloud, going to Oracle Fusion, or are you standing it up on Google?
It's kind of a sort of a hybrid right now. We're moving stuff into Azure, but it's super complicated with Oracle with licensing and what have you. So I think most of it's still running just on legacy Oracle database and Linux, Red Hat. And then over time, we'll probably have to go to the cloud. But again, because of all this nonsense with COVID-19 and all the budget cuts and, you know, whatever, it's going to be medium to long term.
Do you have to, let me try that. You said over the time you're going to have to go to the cloud. Why? Is that just because somebody's going to decide, let's go to the cloud? Or is there a business reason behind, let's take it and stand it up over somewhere else?
Yeah, it's more the overall desire to, again, reuse SG&A and right size stuff, because we actually divested a lot of stuff over the last couple of years. And, you know, the board and a lot of people feel that, you know, why are we spending so much money and stuff that's really not that specific, because you have to keep in mind that, like I said, we don't really do that much exciting stuff in Oracle, right? I mean, it's AR, it's AP, it's GL, it's fixed assets, some tax and stuff. But most of the downstream really complicated stuff.
You don't find that stuff exciting?
Well, it's very generic, right? I mean, there's no competitive advantage there.
No, I know. I'm fooling
Be
around.
facetious. I know. So
yeah.
The question is, what's the competitive advantage of paying so much money to Oracle in licensing and Oracle database licensing, and then having a whole army of people and consultants and MSPs to keep something updated and patched and running. And
Well, what's the alternative? You need an alternative. You're right.
yeah, so it might be Workday. Who knows? If you could just simplify your legal structures and your accounting, because again, we're not pharmaceutical, we're not chemical, so we don't have super complex accounting as such, and most of what's complex is already in all the downstream systems that are very specific and fit for purpose and not going anywhere. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, Peter.
But again,
we have a customer that's an Oracle shop, and for years we're trying to find, they're on an older platform, in terms of operations, and they really want to move. But boy, that licensing really paints you in a box in terms of what your options are from a platform perspective. I don't know, what have you guys, when you look at cloud, I mean, are there good options for you? Because we've really worked with the customers trying to provide some solutions there, but Oracle makes it difficult, in my opinion.
They do. You would have to run out the clock on the contract, not renew, and then you have to do something similar to the shadow model where you already start preparing for it, so that once you cut it loose, you can you can just switch over right away. So that's why it's complicated. And to build a shadow, parallel build, that's very expensive. You're going to burn a lot of cash, and you have to keep it very secret, because usually you don't keep the same people in IT and operation and accounting, but you want to combine it with going with an MSP offshore, or go, instead of having people in New York and New Jersey, maybe you want to put it in Mississippi or something that's super cheap, comparatively speaking, or in our case, Colombia or Mexico City because of the language, right? Spanish. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's.
We've got a little over 10 minutes here. I want to bring in Marcus into the mix, and Afshin. See, you're joining a little bit late. Good to meet you. Look forward to getting you involved here as well. But Marcus, it's good to see you as well. Give a quick intro to the group.
Sure. Marcus Merchant, IT Director, Old Thompson. We're a food manufacturing company. We're not using SAP directly, but I'm heavily involved in the ERP. We're using a different cloud-based ERP system. A lot of what you talked about, we're going through right now. We just are going through a big acquisition. They're running on an old system, so dealing with a lot of the same pains as far as the, migrating the financials, and it was same boat as far as lining them up to make sure that their account structure matches our account structure to bring it in. Our particular ERP, we're doing the consolidated financials. We can set up pieces of the business at different levels, so we can have like supply chain, ordering, AP, AR set up at a consolidated level to run both plants, but be able to report cost in cost of goods and look at it on an operational side all the way down.
I got it. What's changed in light of COVID? Has it affected priorities? Is it just the integration and not much changed? What's happened here?
For us, we're in the food world, so I like to tell people like the global supply for food hasn't changed, but where people are buying it from has. And they've been buying it from who our customers are, the big box, the grocers, stuff like that. So we've seen a huge increase in business. We're sustaining a 40% month over month increase in volume and revenue. It's been a blessing, honestly. But at the same time, it brings new challenges, right? How, where we set up to scale, so it's making us rethink a lot of those, being able to scale, obviously with the acquisition, we've got to be able to do the same thing as well. But it's really been our plant practices that have changed the most in offsetting shifts and rearranging break schedules and making sure we minimize that crowd of people that might have gathered around the time clock or gathered in the break room or whatnot. So from a COVID perspective, it's been, mitigating risk while growing the business.
I got it. I think I understand the goal. What are you doing? How are you doing that?
As far as the risk mitigation?
Yeah.
We temperature monitoring when they walk in the door, a set of questionnaires that they have to answer, making sure they're not showing any symptoms. Mm-hmm. If something comes up or if there's a question, send them home. There's some good, I think, policies in place from the federal and the state level that, we can get reimbursed and the employee can get full pay, to not make them feel worried about well, I've got to show up sick because I can't afford not to. So I think that's been a big help. And then just making sure we have policies in place that if there were a positive test, that what are our, what do we do, right? But we have to prove that to governing bodies like, SQF and the FDA. So we just have to make sure we practice what we preach.
I have a question about your acquisition. What happens with the ERP? Are they coming onto your system? Or where do you go with all that?
Yeah, that changed quickly. Originally, we were going to look at bringing them in their ERP at month 3 or 4. When we started peeling back that onion, there were some big concerns on what their business processes were today. So that got put on the forefront. So yes, they will be. Initially, we were going to take in pieces of information and drop it into a data lake and be able to report on them the same way we report on the primary company. And we still may do that, just depending on how long the ERP transition will take, but we are bringing them onto our ERP.
What is your ERP again?
We use Plex.
Plex, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Is that specific to the food industry?
No, they're actually highly, most of their customer base is automotive. They're based in Detroit, so that's kind of where they got their base, but they've kind of shifted their focus to the food and beverage recently to really try and up that. They have an interesting business model. So their subscription is based on the revenue of their customers, right? So there's no user-based licensing costs. It's all based around the revenue of the company. So I imagine with the COVID, we all know what happened to the traditional manufacturing world in automotive and medical and whatnot. So with their base,
they calculate their license as a percentage of revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, which is interesting, right? It could be good and bad. Good, at least you know what your cost is as you move forward, and that your cost is going to come down if your revenue goes down. But from their side, obviously, it gives them the push to make their customers better, right? Because the more revenue their customers make, the more they're going to make. But I think they're trying to mitigate their risk too, having to have, I'm sure they're going to be taking a big hit on their subscription costs due to the automotive industry, this last 6 months. So I think that's why they're trying to really focus on the food and beverage to kind of level out that where their customer base is.
And can you take them on the cloud? Can you host them on the cloud?
They're all cloud-based. They don't even have on-prem.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Marcus, great story. Thank you so much, and good to see you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Let's invite Afshin to share a story here. Afshin, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining. Just give us a quick intro, high-level stuff.
You bet. So I'm the director of cloud services and disaster recovery for Wiley. I like what Peter was talking about earlier. I joined a little bit late. I apologize. I had a workshop that I was conducting myself. So we're talking about Oracle and getting off of Oracle. You have haters and you got lovers. A good product depends just how you use it, right? Just like a lot of other technology products that we have, at least at Wiley, we don't use everything about it. So the question is, why pay that exuberant price? Being involved in migrating applications from the data center to the cloud, the question is, do you optimize prior to your migration, or do you go to the cloud then optimize? And he made a very valid point about, we're not a pharmaceutical. At least we are not in pharmaceutical. We are technology and in research and publishing. So the question is, how can we simplify our processes downstream? And so we didn't get here overnight, right? So it's taken us maybe 10, 20 years to get into the complex environment that we create for ourselves. So the question is, how do we get to address it? It's not a technology problem solely by itself. So everyone needs to come in and focus on it together. And of course, if there's a will, there's a way. So I think that's how we're looking at it. You talked about how COVID is impacting things. There are things that are urgent and there are things that are important. And usually the urgent stuff take precedence, right? I think COVID's helped us find the focus on all the important stuff. Being able to automate, focus on automation, make sure that we get to, save our customers money. At the same time, be efficient. It's about efficiency these days. We've made some really good progress, not necessarily on the SAP and on Oracle front, but that's something that we're definitely focused on. So COVID for us, COVID for us, as you know, education is taking a very big hit. We got peak season coming up. We really won't know. We've done our estimates, but we really won't know how we're impacted, I think, in about a month or two when students come back. And that will be a determining factor, not just for us, but for a lot of people in this industry.
I've got to ask, my cousins are in college, my kids are going back to school, there's remote, there's virtual schooling. How much, I mean, don't share anything you can't, but we're all, everybody here on this call is intimately curious about the changing learning paths for our kids. So are you seeing a shift here in terms of how education?
Depends on the different products you have, right? So Wiley is in education research, lots of different areas. It's a very diversified portfolio. As far as education, though, when you look at the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, because we have different durations, right? Our spring and winter seasons are different, right? In Europe, we're seeing an uptick in our products. We cater to 10x load, which was quite nice. We don't know how the US will react. So during summer, we had some really good performance, and we catered to it. Australia is looking a little different, and the US, we're prepared. If we see that massive load that we saw in Europe, we're prepared for it, and we will welcome it. And if it doesn't materialize, well, there will be a lot of lessons learned. At least we'll know we'll be able to meet the challenge if it comes our way.
Super. Hey, Bob asked a question earlier about quote to cash within SAP and its ability to handle subscription, its ability to handle software and hardware. I don't know if that's part of your instance, but do you have any candid feedback for the maturity of SAP's quote to cash module?
I do have a little bit of insight, but I don't think I'm in a position to, provide valuable feedback.
No worries. Last one for you. What's one roadmap change? Maybe you're not going so fast to S4. Maybe you're racing to S4. Maybe you're putting in, a module that you never even thought you would. What's one roadmap change?
We're rigorously testing our disaster recovery strategy. And I'm quite thrilled about that. We've got a very good plan, and we've done a tabletop test. So it's not a feature thing, but it's a preparation thing.
How do you do it? How do you do your DR for SAP? Is it in an AWS? Are you doing your own data center?
We have our own data center. We're also looking at how it would look like if we were to do it in AWS and other cloud providers. So we're doing that just to be able to reduce our RTO and RPO. Currently, it's in our data center, and we have a fabulous team that supports the product.
Cool. Well, we've got a whole group here from Univision and Advanced Energy and Pratt and T-Systems, who are all may have some experiences if you have any questions in terms of the DR capabilities of those different models.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, folks, we're an hour in. It's time to wrap it up. Let me thank everybody. Please use this group for further networking. Big thanks to Carl and Alex for co-hosting here today. Carl, really appreciate the opportunity and the conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. So guys, what we're going to do is I'm going to send an email around and we'll do some follow-up. Obviously, if there are any opportunities for T-Systems, that's what they're in the business of, is supporting people with their environments. But regardless, please reach out with any questions or comments. We'll wrap it up here. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.